Here we go.
All right.
Okay. So we've got that up and running. And so,
Cool.
all right, why is this not? There we go. So I'll turn it over to you, Mitchell.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. And thank you, Jennifer DuCree, for volunteering to present to us tonight on food safety culture as a strategic asset. As you can read here, Jennifer has got numerous years, 20 years, probably plus, in the background that spans, various food sectors, including bakery, snack foods, fruit, vegetable processing, repacking, nuts, and confections, and just an enormous amount of things, all regarding foods. She holds a bachelor or an MS, Master of Science in Management and Organizational Behavior from Benedict University, and then a BS in Biology from University of Minnesota, home of the Gophers up north of me. She is a certified food safety quality auditor, Lean Sigma, Six Sigma, Green Belt, SQF practitioner, PCQI, Human Food Certificates. And I'm thinking FSVP is Food Safety VP certificates, FSSC, FSMS, Lead Auditor in Advanced Training in Crisis Management and Food Defense, and in CAPA and root cause analysis. And there's a lot there that, yeah, I think that we should have some time to, if we have questions, and we can ask more about that. And maybe Jennifer, you can explain some of that, because I personally, I'm in the manufacturing realm of medical device, and yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with food, but it's like a whole nother, and I think a lot of people, unless you're in that industry, it's a little bit, it's new. So this is really exciting, and a great opportunity to hear, different things going on in the food industry, and especially around quality and how you guys control and monitor and measure it and make sure that people don't get food poisoning, right?
Yeah,
So,
that would be one of the goals.
so yeah, and is there anything else? I mean, with further ado, Jennifer, if you want to start presenting, and if there's anything that I really didn't, that needs to be more enlightened, please let us know, and um, take it away.
We'll take it away. All right. Thanks so much, Mitchell. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of acronyms, right? The food industry, much like many others, have so many acronyms. In general, I hold several certifications just in controlling food, whether that be intentional adulteration. I just recently received my teaching certificate for PCQI, which stands for Preventive Controls Qualified Individual, something some of you may be familiar with. There's other things like the FSVP, actually stands for Foreign Supplier Verification Programs, lots of acronyms. I don't expect anybody to really memorize all of those. But without further ado, and technology is not always my friend today either, so I'm going to move a couple things around, and you're going to have to let me know that you're able to see the screen. Zoom does not allow me. Oh, maybe I got it. Are you able to see?
Yes.
You
Yep.
are.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, it looks good,
Oh,
Jennifer.
okay, great. And you can see that it's moving through the
Yeah,
screens.
your bio is up now.
Okay, perfect. I was mentioning, and I just lost it. Give me 1 second. Where did it go? Let me pull it up this way. I'm going to lose sight of everybody who's on the call. So if anything happens, use the audio, please, so that I can hear you. But now that we're in my bio, we'll fast forward a little bit, and we'll start here. Food safety culture is a strategic asset driving excellence beyond audits. So as someone who's worked across nearly every part of the food industry over the past 2 decades, I've really had the opportunity firsthand to see that food safety called one of the most powerful drivers of excellence in business. And some of these things, hopefully, you can take forward into the atmospheres that you work in as well. So it goes far beyond passing audits or checking boxes. As many of you know, the companies that truly stand out embed food safety into the fabric of their operations in total. So you usually see them in conversations between teams, the behaviors on the floor, and the decisions made at every level. And that's what we'll explore today, really how to evaluate food safety culture as a strategic asset, one that not only protects our brands and bottom line, but also fosters trust, resilience, and continuous improvement, which I know is applicable in many different sectors of the business, especially manufacturing. So we'll look at practical strategies, real world examples, and ways to make culture measurable and meaningful. And because at the end of the day, culture isn't what's written in a manual. This stems in every business. It's what's lived out every day, every shift among all different departments. All right. Hopefully you can still see that I'm moving through. We should be on executive summary. So we'll start here with a high level summary. As mentioned, food safety culture isn't just a simply check the box activity. It really is a strict driver that impacts performance, risk, and brand trust, as well as brand loyalty. And when culture is strong and embedded throughout the organization, I've noticed that the benefits are tangible with fewer recalls, greater efficiency, and stronger consumer confidence, as supported by recent findings in the Camden DuCree advertisement that they have in 2023. This is why both the FDA and the Global Food Safety Initiatives call out culture as foundational to a resilient food safety system. As the risks are equally clear when culture is neglected, organizations face not only legal and financial consequences, but also long-term reputational harm. And I noticed a few folks are in the medical device industry that have joined. It's the same premise here. So ultimately, how we approach and prioritize food safety cultures really shapes the outcomes across the business. All right. So again, culture isn't just a nice to have, it's what turns policies into practice. And in our industry, as well as many others, there has been life or death consequences in the result of not having an appropriate culture. So food is no different. Foodborne illness remains a major public health issue with staggering costs, both human and financial. If you're paying attention to the news, or you get any FDA notifications via email, we'll see that there are several food safety recall events that are happening on a weekly basis, some of them very large. You may have recently heard about the Boar's Head recall incident. That's just one of the many that have occurred in the last several months. And organizations with a strong embedded food safety culture not only see fewer recalls, they build trust and resilience in complex high-risk environments like food production, as well as places like medical device. So for perspective, let's look at a recent study by Scharf in 2023 with that second bullet point. They estimate the total economic burden of foodborne illness in the US at nearly $78 billion annually. That's a huge amount. So when factoring in both direct medical costs and indirect costs like lost productivity and suffering, businesses could really go out of business as a result of a lack of food safety culture. This includes impacts from just 14 major foodborne pathogens. So this does not encompass everything that we calculate in the industry when it comes to incident recalls. So strong food safety culture is essential, as we've been mentioning, to maintain trust across all stakeholders. This includes consumers, regulators, and employees. It helps preserve customer loyalty by building confidence in the safety and quality of our products. And it also fosters a mindset of innovation, right? Encouraging better process services that benefit both the brand and the customer experience across many other sectors as well. So companies known for their strong safety culture are more likely to attract and retain top talent, as I'm sure you're aware. So people want to generally work for organizations committed to doing the right thing, especially when nobody's looking, right? Additionally, prioritizing food safety gives us a competitive edge and helps ensure compliance with evolving regulatory requirements. I could probably repeat that over and over again. It's a constant. This reduces risk in reinforcing our commitment to excellence. I'm glad that this is working for me today. Here we see how the concept of food safety culture has evolved over time. For those that aren't in the industry, we've gone through a couple decades worth of changes. So as we just mentioned in that last slide, there's a continuously evolving regulatory culture. So decades ago, the approach was largely reactive. So organizations would address food safety issues really only when problems surfaced, and often after an incident or regulatory action occurred. So the focus was on fixing what went wrong instead of preventing it in the first place. So then came a significant shift with the introduction of the Global Food Safety Initiative, or GFSI, as the food industry notes, and the Food Safety Modernization Act, or termed FSMA. These frameworks raised the bar really by emphasizing leadership accountability, and they required a more assured preventive system. So leadership involvement became really clear and expected, not an afterthought during this time period. So today, in the 2020s and plus, we're entering the next phase, a proactive culture building. So the FDA created what they are terming, quote unquote, the new era of smarter food safety, as FDA noted in 2023. This initiative has accelerated the mindset shift, encouraging organizations really to embed food safety thinking and behaviors into daily operations. So not just into policies and audits, it was more of a requirement for habit building. So this progression reflects a deeper understanding. True food safety excellence depends not only on the system, but the people as well. And I know that that translates across many different organizations, even outside of manufacturing. So this is really bridging on shared values, behaviors, and a culture that prioritizes doing the right thing every time. All right. So as briefly mentioned, regulatory frameworks and certification standards are evolving to place clear accountability on leadership for driving food safety culture. So GFSI and its recognized certification schemes like SQF, some of you may have heard of ISO, BRCGS, and FSSC. These are all acronyms that are related to the GFSI program. Their auditing schemes, they now embed culture requirements directly into their standards. So this includes CEO accountability, formally training programs, integration of culture in everyday operations, and ongoing monitoring of that culture performance. And for example, SQF, and this is one of the most recent audits I've been a participant in, required that a culture policy is not only documented, but visibly posted. So they were looking for signs around the facility with leadership demonstrating active support. So they're looking also for folks to be walking the floor, even at those high levels. The takeaway here is that culture is now auditable. It's measurable, an element within the food safety program itself. It's no longer an intangible concept. Sometimes it's hard for people to understand exactly how you show evidence of such during an audit, but the guidelines now are becoming very clear, and certification schemes like the SQF and BRCGS outline what it would take to provide evidence of leadership commitment in this food safety culture. All right, so when we talk about food safety culture, it's important to start with a shared understanding of what it actually means. In 2018, a position paper from the GFSI, or Global Food Safety Initiative, defined the culture of food safety as the shared values, beliefs, and norms that affect mindset and behavior toward food safety in, across, and throughout an organization. This definition is powerful because it emphasizes that food safety culture is not just about policies and training. It's really about the collective mindset of everyone in the organization. And it spans departments, it spans across job levels, even locations, especially across an entire state lines or an entire country. It shapes how decisions are made, how risks get prioritized, and how people act, especially when no one is watching. So when we talk about improving food safety culture, we're really talking about influencing how people think and they feel, and how then they behave when it comes to protecting the integrity and the safety of the food supply. And I know that's important for everybody who eats food, right? All right, so this slide here, just in conversation forward, is going to explore 4 core elements or pillars, if you will, which are leadership commitment, employee engagement, cross-functional collaboration, and continuous improvement, many of which are seen in other sectors as well outside of food. These are really the scaffolding that support a mature food safety culture, and we'll dive into each one over the next few slides, starting with leadership commitment. All right. I lost a slide. What do you see on your screen? Do you see leadership commitment?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I seem to have lost one and not the other. So leadership commitment. Leaders really in this point, I think it's been very clear, must drive the tone and alignment. And what happens at the top tends to trickle down from the bottom. So it becomes really easy for employees at floor level to be able to mimic or enhance what they see at the top. So leaders can do this by driving KPIs. KPIs will link then to the actions that are necessary in creating a food safety culture. So integrating these food safety KPIs into executive performance reviews, then we can see that. I'm going to click this over. Maple Leaf Foods ensured that leadership remained directly accountable for food safety outcomes during their assessment of their food safety culture. As a result, the company significantly strengthened its food safety culture and improved regulatory compliance according to the Camden article in 2023. So Maple Leaf Foods clearly demonstrated a deep commitment to food safety, as highlighted on their website, which is on the right-hand side, pulled directly from their site. They emphasize strict manufacturing processes and a rigorous testing regime to ensure product safety and quality. So their language really reflects a proactive, almost obsessive focus on protecting the consumer, which underscores food safety not just in compliance measure, but as a core company value as well. So I think it's safe to say that Maple Leaf is a safe food source. All right. So now let's focus on the frontline staff. If employees don't feel safe speaking up, or they're not allowed to speak up, or don't fully understand their role in protecting food safety, performance tends to suffer. So building engagement requires more than just training. It involves fostering open communication, encouraging ownership, and recognizing contributions. A great example comes from the Cornell University 2020 article. It was a study on good agricultural practices, another acronym, GAP. It was training for small-scale farmers. The study found that simple, well-structured education not only improved safety practices and compliance, but it expanded their market access and boosted revenue. So the takeaway here is that when employees are empowered and equipped, food safety tends to improve, and so does business performance. And although I'm going over these examples very high level, there is a reference document at the end of the presentation, which will be shared, that you'll be able to find additional information through the links. All right, silos. Gotta love silos. They're one of our biggest barriers to building strong food safety culture, and not just food safety culture, but culture in general when we're talking about other sectors. So true collaboration means engaging not just quality, but also procurement, marketing, operations, other key departments and functions. A great example comes from the Marks and Spencer's, leading British retailer. They developed a sustainable scorecard, which you see on the right-hand side, and I know it's very small. You can't really read it, but it aligned with food safety, environmental impact, and ethical sourcing expectations across their entire supply chain. So by fostering a collaboration between the procurement, quality, and sustainability teams, they really created a clear shared performance expectation for their suppliers. And the result was that they improved their supplier ability, stronger compliance with food safety standards, and better supplier relationships. Pretty much a win across the board and for all parties involved. This example illustrates how food safety must really be woven into the entire value chain, not just treated as a standalone function or as a responsibility of one department. Food safety culture needs to evolve, and it should evolve continuously. It's not just a set it and forget it exercise. It's not a monthly exercise or a monthly to do and then you forget and don't work on it further. Regularly measuring culture through surveys Internal audits and behavior observations is essential to understand where you stand and where you need to improve. So a strong example of this comes from the Yusheng Food Inc. company, which faced a recall of over 72,000 pounds of ready-to-eat meat and poultry due to potential Listeria monocytogenes contamination. It was a very large to-do. Thanks to a well-developed culture within the company of preparedness and a strong crisis management plan, the company quickly traced the source. They communicated transparently with their regulators, which is really important to stay in good graces, and execute the recall efficiently. So the result then is that they were able to cut financial losses by 50% compared to industry averages and preserved consumer trust. Super important in business going further. This underscored how an adaptive, well-measured food safety culture can significantly reduce the financial and reputational impact of food illness events. This would also apply to other industries as well. All right, so we have a fun diagram here. In 1976, some of you may have seen this already. Edward T. Hall compared culture to an iceberg, which we see on the screen. Only about 10% or the external surface culture is visible. The remaining 90%, the internal or deep culture, lies underneath the surface, shaping the behaviors, the decisions, and the values. The same is true for food safety culture. So it's not a one size fits all, as we mentioned. And to make it real, food safety must be defined clearly and meaningfully for each function and team. For example, purchasing should understand that selecting suppliers isn't just about cost. It must also ensure that they meet food safety requirements. So maintenance leaders as well should focus not only on equipment uptime, but also on maintaining sanitary food safe conditions. So in smaller organizations, the owner or operator often sets the tone, just as in large organizations, the CEO and senior leaders may lead by example as well. So new employees are integrated into culture through training and reinforced both formal processes and peer behaviors. So if we make this practical and not just within the food industry, what does a strong culture look like on the floor? What do you hear in meetings? These are the questions you should ask yourself. How do people respond when concerns are raised? And remember, culture lives in behaviors, not necessarily in binders. Those are just where the policies are. So as we continue, I invite you to reflect on recent moments when culture was either clearly present or clearly absent, regardless of the industry that you work in. What was it that you saw, you heard, or you felt based on this graphic here of the iceberg? All right, assessing food safety culture can and should be structured activity, much like anything else. GFSI, or Global Food Safety Initiative, defined 5 key dimensions of our mature culture: vision and mission, people, consistency, adaptability, and hazards and risk awareness. Oh, I think it just moved. We'll go back. There we go. On its own. So they also provide maturity models to help organizations gauge progress, ranging from early stages of doubt and react to more advanced stages of internalizing, where food safety values are embedded and self-sustaining, much like a habit. So to measure culture across these dimensions, you can leverage things like employee surveys to gauge awareness and attitudes, KPIs, as we've mentioned, and behavior tracking to monitor consistency and accountability, and engagement and cause analysis, or RCAs, to assess ownership and adaptability. These tools give us a benchmark, really, where our organization stands today, and it guides us on a roadmap for improvement in the future. So this maturity model on the screen offers a useful lens to evaluate where organizations may stand and where you want to go. So at stage 1, culture is blame-driven. It's definitely not a place we want to be in. Mistakes trigger finger pointing rather than learning. It can be very detrimental to all parties involved. Stage 2 is firefighting, where teams react to issues as they arise, which is great, but rarely do they address the root cause so that problems continue to occur. So in stage 3, leadership and teams recognize the importance of food safety culture, but meaningful action is still limited or inconsistent. So we're getting there, but we're not quite there. So by stage 4, the organization becomes data-driven and preventive. This is a really great place to be. Systems are in place to monitor performance, trends are analyzed, and improvements are proactive. And finally, then at stage 5, this is the ideal state, which represents a fully mature culture. Food safety isn't just a program at this point, it's part of who we are and how everyone operates daily. Again, that's the habit forming. So as we reflect on your own situation, are you still in firefighting mode? You ask yourself, have you built predictive systems? Do employees feel truly accountable and empowered? Do they understand how roles impact food safety outcomes? All of these questions would be important to understand exactly where you are and where you need to go. So I would encourage you to use this model to self-assess. You can facilitate honest dialogue across teams and set concrete goals for cultural growth using this maturity journey. All right, so let's take a moment to explore the 5 dimensions and the critical components of food safety culture as outlined by GFSI. As we stated, these elements provide a clear framework to help organizations understand, build, and strengthen their culture at every level. So organizational leadership sets the tone and direction for its food safety culture, and the corporate vision and mission, as we stated, need to not mention food safety specifically, although it's important and should be reflected in company communication. So direction setting helps establish a good food safety culture because it requires clear vision, a shared embedded throughout the organization, and investment alignment ensures that the organization is properly resourced for food safety initiatives. You'd hate to get to a situation where you have a great idea, but we aren't resourced in order to support it. The food safety policy statement is great. It places its requirements in alignment with the company's strategic approach, which is very important. So people is the next section. They're a critical component of the food safety culture. Just like anything else or anywhere else, employee behaviors and activities, from processes on the farm to serving customers in a restaurant, contribute to the safety of food and potentially decrease or increase the risk of foodborne illness. I know a lot of folks have heard of norovirus. You go to a restaurant, somebody is infected with norovirus, they unintentionally pass it to consumers, and it becomes a news article or a news station report. So it's important at this point to establish a formal food safety structure with clearly defined individual roles and responsibilities to prohibit things from that, or things like that from happening. All right, consistency refers to ensuring the alignment of food safety priorities with people, technology, resources, and processes to effectively apply a food safety program and support its culture. So such consistency occurs in a variety of related decisions, actions, and behaviors, including accountability and compliance, performance measurement, and documentation are included. So other essential processes where consistency is crucial include direction setting and alignment with risks, investment alignment, and coherent food safety communications. And as we know, this would apply to just about any organization across any sector. Adaptability is next. It refers to the ability of an organization to adjust to changing influences and conditions and respond within its current state or move to a new one. So we practice this a lot when we have regulation changes. All right, fifth and final, recognizing actual and potential hazards and risks at all levels and functions represent a key element to building and sustaining a food safety culture. So basic scientific and technical information should be accessible and understandable to everyone. And if it's not, we should make it simplified. So as a company, it's important to keep current on the latest industry intelligence, including market incidents, changes to food safety legislation, could be medical device legislation, significant new technology and analytical advances. AI is huge now. We might want to take a step back and understand how that impacts us as well. This will broaden our awareness and understanding of potential risks and hazards going forward. So like we said, food safety culture is not just to check the box. It's also not a soft concept. I'll put quotes around that. It's really a powerful driver of business outcomes. And a strong culture helps lower risk of recall and enables faster, more effective crisis response when issues do arise. So it reduces downtime and costly rework. So those that are working in CI hopefully resonate with this, because employees are empowered to identify and address risks early and before they escalate. So it also builds trust both internally and externally with this activity. So when consumers and partners see transparency and genuine commitment to food safety, brand loyalty tends to grow, as we've mentioned. And in a crowded market, this becomes a really big key differentiator. Companies that are known for doing the right thing, not just meeting minimum compliance, stand out and win lasting customer trust. So we've talked about how strong food safety culture drives measurable business results, but what happens when the culture is missing or underdeveloped? Unfortunately, we often learn the most from the crisis itself. So one of the most well-known examples, perhaps known to you as well, the Jack in the Box E. coli outbreak. So we'll take a closer look at how this incident became a turning point, not just for one company, but for an entire industry, be it the food. So in late 1992, if you haven't heard about this instance, Jack in the Box faced a devastating E. coli 0157H7 outbreak, which was linked to undercooked hamburgers. An incident resulted in 4 deaths, over 700 illnesses, severely damaging the public trust in the company's operations. So in response, Jack in the Box leadership took decisive action, which was great. They recognized that restoring trust required more than just a technical fix. It demanded a fundamental shift in food safety culture. One of the most difficult things to identify, sometimes by senior leaders. So the company rolled out comprehensive training programs at every level, which emphasized proper cooking techniques, hygiene practices, and the critical importance of following food safety standards. The goal was to empower every employee to take ownership of food safety, which really helped them tremendously. So to ensure these efforts were effective, Jack in the Box implemented rigorous monitoring systems to include regular audits and proactive microbial testing. And this data was using a driven approach, which enabled the company to catch issues early and continuously improve. The article continues to demonstrate that food safety became embedded in Jack in the Box business strategy when they invested in advanced equipment and restructured their supply chain to prioritize safety at every step, from sourcing through preparation. And this strategic integration signaled a long-term commitment to food safety, which is great. I love Jack in the Box. If you aren't near one or you happen to be visiting, I definitely recommend it at this point. The result here is that these efforts transformed the business's food safety culture. How could they not, right? The company regained consumer trust and helped raise industry standards. Today, their proactive approach is widely regarded as a model for how strong leadership and committed culture can turn crisis into lasting change, and hence why we bring this up as an example. And I apologize, I can't see the screen. Is there a question?
I know, building over it pretty good.
Actually, I think somebody's got a hot mic. Narendra?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a conversation outside.
Hey, Rob.
Okay.
Rob? I don't know if you have the ability to mute.
Yeah, I think I have the ability right now.
Defense system,
I
body
feel like I have the ability.
and you're a fight yeah, it's really bad.
Bob, I'll let you tell me what you'd like me to do.
I'm trying.
Oh, perhaps.
I think you found the mute. No, he's not. Okay, I'm trying to find.
Do you need me to stop sharing?
You right click on their name, Bob. Sometimes you can mute them if you're the.
I
the
can't
leader,
get
I
to
think.
it. Hang on a second.
No, બે ચાર દિવસ નીકળી જવાના બીજા.
એટલે કે અચલનો ફોન આવ્યો તો કે અમદાવાદમાં આવું થયું મેં કોઈ તો
I don't know why I can't.
કનેક્શન
Where the-
બહુ નુકસાન થયું છે મેં કહ્યું.
હા, બહુ માણસો મરી ગયા, 300 ઉપર મરી ગયા સર.
હા 300 ઉપર જ કેમ કે 250 તો આમાં જ હતા ને બીજા તો કેટલાય મરી ગયા હશે ત્યાં આગળ બિચારા અને ભણતા છોકરાઓ મેડિસિન પેલા ડોક્ટરો હશે અંદર. ભગવાન.
Oh, maybe.
Narendra? I don't know if she can hear us. Narendra.
Oh, there we go.
It's muted now.
Okay, perfect. All right, sorry about that. We'll continue if we're good. We've got Chipotle next. Another well-known brand. So of course, the lessons of food safety culture, as we've been speaking about, aren't limited to the 1990s. So even in more recent years, we've seen how rapid growth and gaps in preventive culture can have costly consequences. Another high-profile case is the Chipotle example and their 2015 outbreak. So a case that underscored how culture must evolve as business scale. So in late 2015, Chipotle experienced a series of foodborne illness outbreaks involving E. coli norovirus, there's that virus again, and salmonella across multiple US states. These incidents sickened more than 500 people and severely impacted the Chipotle brand reputations and customer loyalty and stock performance quite significantly. So the Chipotle leadership responded with a public commitment to becoming the industry leader in food safety. And that they did. They temporarily closed stores for deep cleaning. I was sad about that. I used to eat Chipotle almost on a daily when I was working very close to one in Minnesota. They engaged in third-party food safety consultants. They initiated a company-wide food safety review. The CEO acknowledged shortcomings and took personal responsibility, signaling a top-down shift toward transparency and reform. So if you remember back a couple slides, we talked about how important it was for leadership to exemplify what was needed from top down. So Chipotle launched mandatory food safety training for all of their employees, including enhanced hand washing protocols, revised illness reporting procedures, and cooking and holding standards. So the company also created a dedicated food safety team, and they required certification in food handling for all restaurant managers. So this really set the stage for a promising future to rebuild brand trust. So to track their improvements, Chipotle implemented high-frequency audits. So DNA-based pathogen testing of ingredients and supplier performance scorecards were also implemented. And the company began to proactively monitor compliance and use data to identify trends and target areas for intervention. Food safety became central to Chipotle's operational and sourcing strategy at that point. They really shifted from using fresh ingredients prepped in store to centralized high control commissary kitchens for many items. And the company invested in new technologies like high pressure processing to reduce pathogen risks without sacrificing food quality. So while this seems to be above and beyond, it really worked for them in building the business forward. And while the outbreaks initially damaged the trust in the sales, Chipotle's long-term commitment to food safety has since improved internal accountability and reduced risk. The crisis served as a turning point for Chipotle, embedding food safety as a core business value and prompting industry-wide conversations about preventive controls in fast casual dining. As exemplified today, we're still talking about this. It was a great example of how culture can improve with growth. All right, so as we've seen from both Jack in the Box and Chipotle, the path to strong food safety culture requires intentional action starting at the top and reinforced across every level of the organization. So a question here would be, how do we take those lessons and apply them to your own business? And this is outside of the food sector as well. So we're going to talk about some practical, actionable ways that we can start building, more importantly, sustaining a food safety culture that delivers real business results, or a culture that delivers real business results. So at the leadership level, Visibility and accountability are key. As we've mentioned, leaders should regularly hold town halls to communicate food safety priorities, conduct floor walks to stay connected to day-to-day operations, and embed food safety KPIs into business performance reviews. All things that we've seen those businesses do that had gone through some major incidents. So when leaders visibly champion food safety, it signals to the entire organization that it actually matters. So then people tend to follow the leader in that instance. So at the team level, engagement happens through relevance and connection, as we've been describing. It's helpful to use scenario-based training and storytelling to help employees see how food safety applies to their specific roles, and why their actions make a difference. That's the important part. Once the employees understand the why, it's easier to help them make the difference forward. So stories, both positive and cautionary, build emotional connection and lasting awareness. And at the organizational level, it's about measurement and continuous improvement. So conducting regular culture pulse checks through surveys, leveraging dashboards to track key metrics and monitor trends over time are a couple of key examples. These tools help identify gaps, and we can celebrate progress with these, and it guides us to where we need to focus next. And remember, culture isn't static. It must be actively nurtured at every level, from the boardroom to the front line. All right, building a strong food safety culture isn't the responsibility of executives alone. We've seen this time and time again. It lives and breathes through the actions of everyone, from line workers to the CEO, and every role contributes and every interaction matters. One of the best ways to reinforce culture is through key career moments, onboarding, promotions, performance reviews, and even offboarding. A really important key that some people miss. Getting those details around why people leave is oftentimes a great example of what needs to be corrected forward. And these are natural touch points where expectations around food safety can be very clearly communicated and reinforced, or gaps closed where they're noted. So it's also critical to remember that culture is learned through observation as much as instruction. This applies to other industries as well. So employees will model the behaviors they see, whether they're positive or negative. It's much like a 5-year-old. That's why it's so important to intentionally tie food safety expectations to the leadership behavior model. And leaders at all levels then should be visibly demonstrating the values and actions that they want to see, so that you may emulate them appropriately. And when leadership walks the talk, it sets a tone that cascades through the organization in total. So just as a culture is modeled through leadership and reinforced at key moments, it's also brought to life through the stories we tell. Stories drive behavior far more effectively than data alone. I could probably sit here and in my 25 years tell you at least a dozen stories that would demonstrate positive and negative compliance around food safety culture. So employees may not remember a policy document, especially when it's really long, 22 pages perhaps, but they will remember a story about how someone's actions protected a customer or prevented a crisis. That's why it's so powerful to share examples of near misses that were caught in time, or quality wins where proactive behaviors made a difference, because these stories create an emotional connection and make food safety real and personal. It's easier then to react appropriately when we see an incident or have to escalate a potential. It's also important to visibly reinforce wins or celebrate when people do the right thing and make those moments visible across the organization. This helps shape the behaviors that we want to see repeated. So in short, storytelling turns food safety from a checklist into a shared value. Reinforcing a food safety culture through stories and behaviors is critical, but it also needs to be embedded into the core business systems to be truly sustainable. We've talked about this time and time again throughout this conversation. Culture should not operate in an isolation or in a silo. It really must align with the broader risk management process. We need to look for ways to intentionally integrate culture into our risk register, a foreign supplier verification program, or FSVP, corrective and preventive action, or CAPA, and crisis management drills. These programs then would provide natural opportunities to reinforce culture expectations, assess readiness, and surface potential gaps. Audits and investigations should just about be just about technical compliance. We need to use them to probe cultural factors as well. So a few questions to ask here might be, are employees empowered to speak up? Do they feel empowered to speak up? Are corrective actions truly addressing the root cause? Perhaps is there accountability across functions? Those areas and questions will help us get to the root and fix the problem. So we know, here's a reminder of what's truly at stake when it comes to food safety culture. We talked earlier about embedding culture into the risk and governance systems, but let's not lose sight of the human and financial impacts when culture fails. So think back to the Chipotle example. The regulatory penalties, the lawsuits, the brand damage were staggering in that event. The company lost consumer trust, its stock plummeted and took years and millions of dollars to rebuild. But the internal cost is often just as severe and less visible. So poor food safety culture directly impacts the workforce. And in times of crisis, if employees lack trust in leadership or they don't feel empowered and supported, turnover spikes. I'm sure many of you have seen this in your own organizations, And turnover isn't cheap, as we know. Recruiting and onboarding replacements can cost 20 to 30% of an employee's annual salary, not to mention the loss of institutional knowledge and a huge hit to the team morale. So high turnover also slows our recovery. You can't stabilize operations or rebuild trust externally if your team is fragmented and disengaged. So conversely, when employees trust the system and believe leadership has their back, they stay and they help drive the recovery themselves, oftentimes proactively without being asked. So the bottom line here is that food safety culture isn't just about protecting our consumers, it's about protecting our brands, our financial health, and most importantly, the people. So let's take a moment to bring it all together. Building and sustaining a strong food safety culture requires intentional leadership. Intentional is a key word there. Clear communication and disciplined measurement. So leaders must set the tone, as we spoke about, funding the right tools. They need to model the right behaviors and reinforce food safety as a core business value, often through the mission and vision. Communication should go beyond policies, definitely. We need to use stories, real world examples, and consistent messaging to bring food safety to life for every employee so that they can emulate it forward. And culture must be measured through employee feedback, KPIs, for example, dashboards and audits. You can celebrate progress and continuously improve. You also know where you need to go in the event of an incident. So when leadership, communication, and measurement are aligned, you don't just have a food safety program, you really create a food safety culture, one that protects the brand, the financial performance, and the people. So as we move into the final takeaway, I'll leave you with a simple challenge. What's one action you'll take or encourage others to elevate food safety culture in your organization or any culture that, depending on your sector, starting today? So to close, when we talk about food safety culture, we're talking about something far more powerful than a checklist or a program. A strong culture drives excellence that goes well beyond compliance. It influences how your people think, how they act, how they respond under pressure, and it becomes a true source of competitive advantage. So leadership engagement and continuous improvement are absolutely key and critical. You must lead it visibly, communicate it consistently, and measure it rigorously. When you do that, food safety culture becomes woven into the very fabric of the operations. It becomes a habit. So organizations that get this right don't just pass audits, they really build trust, resilience, and long-term value for the business. And food safety culture is not a side initiative. It's not a one and done, as we mentioned. It is one of the most strategic assets, and how we can cultivate it today will shape the organization's success tomorrow. So with that, I will say a thank you. That was a fairly quick presentation, I understand. I appreciate your time and your attention this evening. I hope the session has sparked new ideas, even if you're not in the food sector, and reinforced vital roles that each of us play in building strong cultures forward. And I know that there's additional conversation, but for those that are interested in exploring the topic further, I do have a white paper that's been published to the RQA Inc.'s website, accessed at www.rqa-inc.com. So there you will find additional PDF additional resources for the presentation today, and a PDF copy will be shared for distribution as well as the recording here. So with that, I'll turn it back over and open up for any questions or perhaps experiences that you'd like to share, especially those that would further enrich the discussion to help us all continue strengthening our cultures.
Well, we've got a question in the chat that we can start with.
Okay.
Let's see. This is from, scroll up, from Ronnie. Coming from the food and beverage industry, we see a lot of use of temp employees, or a high turnover overall. How do you see this affecting employee training and culture? Even if you enforce mandatory basic training for temps, do not care. Let's see, do it. Let's see. If you enforce mandatory basic training for temps, you will care less about your company or share your commitment to safety culture.
Yeah, I think I understand the question.
Okay.
Working in the food industry, you see this a lot. Temporary staff are very difficult, and it's a challenge to really embed a culture if they're turning over so quickly. In this case, I've seen several things work very successfully. I understand that having a proactive approach in training before they actually get to the site is helpful, but I can't reinforce enough that using your supervisors, your floor leads, your management as oversight on a consistent basis, delivering the same message is absolutely critical. It helps kind of curb the challenge you have in that turnover. So remember when we said it starts from the top, when leadership can demonstrate what the culture should be, people tend to follow it. But then on the flip side, they need to also be present. So they can state what the culture should be, but they need to act it out for people to see as well. So that's a great question. I see came from Ronnie. It's tough. It's really tough. But I think when we have accountability by our leaders and we show up on the floor, it's easier managed. It's a great question.
So can you see the chat, Jennifer?
I do. I see that came from Ronnie. Yep.
Well, you got another one now.
Okay, regarding food safety in general, is it widely acknowledged that the British food safety system is superior to that of the United States, especially given recent changes in the US federal government, FDA, but even for preceding decades? That is a question that I'm not sure that I want to answer. We do have the food industry absolutely has seen a lot of change, and I'll even call it some muting with the new administration. I've worked in the BRC system, so it's a British Retail Consortium. Within their guidelines, I've also worked in US based. I can definitely tell you I have my favorites, but as a consultant, if you are aware, I don't necessarily advise one way or the other. What I can say is that they all typically follow the same foundation. The enforcement of each is a little different based on the governments that are running them, essentially. So this is a great question. I can't necessarily tell you which one would be better, but I can tell you which one I would prefer, maybe in an offline conversation. And I see Andrew laughing because he's probably very well aware.
I worked for a company that worked with the British model, but here in the United States, and was very much impressed versus some other things I'd seen elsewhere. And that's about all I will say on in public as well.
Yeah, see, you understand. Yeah.
Yes.
Again, a great question.
Thank you.
All right. I love the conversation. All right, Michael, has quality assurance in the food industry reached the level of other industries like automotive and aerospace? I would love to be able to answer that. Now, RQA does have several offshoots. I work under the food and nutraceuticals, so my expertise does not include automotive and aerospace, but perhaps somebody on the call might have some insight into answering this question.
I've actually worked in aerospace, defense, automotive, and food. So I guess that would somewhat qualify me. If I were to estimate, in terms of safety, I think there's a relative parity between, say, automotive and food. In other aspects of quality, I would say that food is probably a half a decade or decade behind automotive. And then when it comes to aerospace defense, they're shockingly, at least historically, I should say, shockingly 100% inspection based, which you don't usually see in food or automotive. It's relatively impractical, but so anyway, the aerospace in that respect is, inspects at a level that no one else does. So they're probably, ahead in some sense.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think as we see regulation changing, especially with the new administration, inspection isn't as prevalent in food. We'll just be honest. It's not as prevalent in the last few years, and especially as we see going forward. So we're really basing a lot of our programs on internal initiatives. Which would then, based on what you just said, Andrew, be somewhat behind the 8 ball than when we're talking about the criticality around inspections for automotive and aerospace. So that's a really good point. And I see Ronnie's got another one, also working with supplier and co-packer. Ronnie's got some great questions. It's really challenging. So when you're paying for somebody else to manufacture the product, how do you verify safety culture at those locations? I would start by implementing a very strong approved supplier program that includes things like Andrew just mentioned, having inspections, not just trusting the COAs that come in for materials, actually physically viewing your co-mans and their practices several times over the relationship. Many businesses complete what I'll call monthly business reviews, where there's a scorecard and it's got several different KPI factors, including quality and food safety. So if we can embed those into our approved supplier programs, it's easier then to be able to verify safety culture just in general from our friends that are producing for us. Hopefully that answers the question. PCQI is also, or not PCQI, but Food Defense AS and PCQI offers a lot of regulation now around controlling those things and not just trusting. So it's a trust but verify situation. So as you get into the programs around being preventive controls qualified individual, you'll start to see that the regulation is pushing you in the direction of ensuring that your co-mans or your suppliers are operating at the same high standards that you are, and that you're expecting the same quality food safety programs to come out of their manufacturing facilities that you would want to see in yours. This is great. I love this. Anything else? Challenge. It sounds like Ronnie and I need to get together afterwards and have a conversation and kind of kick around some ideas for how we might be able to control those further. But if no other questions, I really appreciate this opportunity. Oh, give examples of using AI in food safety. This is new to me. I'm going to age myself. This is a great question. My wisdom sparkles here. Kind of put me in a category of new to AI. So as we see, my Zoom setup was not exactly working, and it's probably user error and not the program itself. So I've seen just in the brief tenure of AI, I've seen machine learning become an instance. So machine learning, when we're talking about vision systems, for example, let's just take, let's say we're making a bun or a muffin or some sort of bread product. I've seen machine learning take pictures of the product coming down the line and analyzing it. So not only giving us data around what we see as a quality defect, but also what perhaps might lend to an escalation requirement. So that's the extent of my AI and food safety at this point, because it is so new for me. But that might be one where we can extend from AI, like things like ChatGPT or things that are more verbal, into actual machine learning. I've heard that customer compliance or customer complaints use AI frequently as well. So when people call in to report a food safety incident, we can arm AI situations with speaking notes around an incident. So, for example, let's say we have a recall and there's an opportunity to send a part out. So let's say it's not even food safety. Let's say it's I don't know, a freezer pack or some sort of industrial product. AI can take large volumes of calls to gather the data needed to supply a replacement part in instances that we see failure. So I'm sorry I don't have more information there, but again, maybe one of those things we could connect offline and kind of kick around the can around this idea. Pat says, in the food industry, is quality more of a quality control system rather than quality assurance? Is it evolving? It's absolutely evolving. I think what we see over time is that it used to be quality control. It was more focused on the inspection. So folks would be at the line, they'd be taking measurements, they'd be reviewing product immediately in the situation. But so as regulation has evolved, we see now that because culture is now becoming a part of the food safety system or the quality control system in total, we're starting to see now where we need to have quality assurance, which really you can think of that as a proactive approach, right? So the assurance is not just the check the box, here's my quality inspection or my quality control point. I'm now looking at an entire system which forces me to be preventative and proactive in those control systems. Does that make sense? He's going to say, yeah. That's a great question, Pat. Thank you. Yes. Pat and I had the pleasure of working together just about a year and a half ago. So I appreciate the question. It was a great experience, Pat. Thank you. You're very pleasant. He's also comical. So any length of conversation with Pat, I guarantee you're going to be busting a gut.
Somebody must have some kind of a question or observation, or that's where can you see my my PowerPoint
I do.
sharing? Okay, so that was the in general again, is anybody got any comments about the integration of quality and safety into your business's strategy? I'm sure somebody's got some kind of a comment or observation where they can contribute to the discussion. Quiet crowd tonight.
It is, it's getting late, right? I know I'm ready for bed. Sadly,
Okay.
I guess again, my wisdom sparkles are showing my age.
Well, it's only 10 after 7 in Arizona.
You know what, though? I'm actually sitting in Chicago, so we are
No.
at after 9. Jeff just said in healthcare, these are embedded, but the need for speed is driving things now. It's absolutely true. I've heard anyway. I don't work in healthcare, but it's good to know that they are embedded, and hopefully then perhaps maybe AI can help with speed forward. Maybe you could sit with another partner and kick that can around as well.
Well, it looks like we may have tapped out on the question. So any final comments or thoughts you want to add, Jennifer, to the discussion in your presentation?
I don't. I'm very grateful to be able to share today, even if it isn't a sector that you work in. Perhaps there are some ideas here that'll get the wheels turning within your own business. And like I'd mentioned, I will have this presentation available to the chair to send out. It comes with links for references. You can dig in a little deeper that were made throughout the conversation. And then again, there was a white paper published on the RQA Inc. website. If you want to take a look, that gives you a little bit more information as well into the detail behind some of the incidents that we covered. And again, thank you. It was a great meeting, I think, with some great discussion.
There's another comment in the chat.
Yeah. May I ask a short question? What is the trigger for FDA to declare a certain item is now a food safety concern, like contamination from E. coli?
So that's a great question. It's very broad. So if we're talking specifically about pathogens, the process starts with a manufacturer identifying that there's been an issue, and that could have come across in several different ways. It could have been testing that showed that they had an issue. It could have been a consumer complaint that came in that demonstrated an illness that the company then must verify. And so once there's an establishment of an issue, the company really has 24 hours to alert the FDA. So then the FDA will come in and they will look at all of the investigative notes. They'll review their programs. They'll decide whether or not there's a class level to assign, so class 1, 2, or 3. But at that point, there's already been an issue. So FDA doesn't really regulate the investigation around the issue once it occurs. It's on the manufacturer to alert them in the event of an instance. So if we're talking about anything outside of a pathogen, like a foreign material contaminant, there are regulations around what's considered a foreign material. Usually it's related to something that's injurious. So you could have glass, you could have wood, different sizes. As long as it is injurious, it would be considered a hazard and may or may not force investigation around a recall in which the FDA then would be notified. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. What is the sample size? Does one event do it, or it takes more than one event to trigger?
It really could be both. So if we had one consumer complaint and the company in their policy decides that it's a serious enough event or notification to trigger an investigation, that one event investigation could show that perhaps in sampling their retaining, they find the issue persists. If that's the case and they continue what I'll call vector sampling out for the remaining product, they might find that they have an issue that they need to address. Some companies have a threshold. FDA doesn't really define that. They're just more concerned that if you have identified an issue that is serious enough to warrant a recall, that they are notified. So in my experience, and Andrew or anybody else in food, they may have different perspectives based on the policies that were implemented. I've worked in organizations where any pathogen or any foreign material, just one incident report would force an investigation. I've also worked with companies that require 5 or more instances of the same lot as an investigation prompt. So it really depends on the nature and the severity of the issue.
Before the investigation is complete, is the company obligated for public disclosure?
When you mean complete, what do you mean? Or when you say complete?
Yeah, let's say the cause is has a high level of confidence, 99%.
Okay, I see what you're saying. So we want to actually alert the FDA before we've identified a cause, if we haven't done it within that 24 hours of issue notification. So if we know, as soon as we know we have an issue, we need to report within 24 hours. But we might not have the root cause. And I know Pat is a really great resource on this to talk about continuous improvement teams and really driving root cause analysis. He's an expert in that field. So we know root cause analysis could take some time. So knowing what the actual root is not a driver for notifying the FDA. It's important to note what it is, and the FDA is going to want to know what you find, but it's not a key component in the advisement. So the trigger is when we know that we have an issue, the FDA wants to be advised.
Right, but then the FDA at that point does not put it in a public bulletin.
The FDA won't put it necessarily in a public bulletin, correct? Perhaps not.
Right. Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great point too. Some companies as well, they will proactively make that advisement publicly through news media before FDA announces as well. So it really is dependent on the company. Great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So there's another comment from Ronnie in the chat that's rather interesting.
All right, webinar where they said McDonald, I think, is piloting an AI device to verify hand washing. Oh, that is interesting. I would love to learn about that. I know I've used very simple formats. There's like something called a glow gel. I've used in auditing folks in their GMP compliance. So I will basically put this gel in people's hands. It acts as a mimic for microorganisms, and they scrub it around their hand. I have them wash their hands. You know, you sing the happy birthday song, you do the 20 seconds, and then you use a black light, and you can see whether or not that glow gel has been removed based on how well they wash their hands. So understanding how the AI device would work would be super interesting as well. I'll have to look into that. I appreciate that prompt, Ronnie. Thank you.
Sounds like we've tapped everybody out. So thank you for the presentation tonight. It was rather interesting.
And thank you for having me. And I look forward to future events.
Okay, I'm going to stop our recording at this point.